Is it going to get better or worse over time if we ignore it? It's going to get worse.
Winter breakdowns aren't usually caused by bad weather. They're caused by small issues fleets already knew about and didn't act on. And when temperatures drop, those small issues turn into roadside calls, lost time, and frustrated drivers. Today, we're breaking down what actually causes winter breakdowns, what fleets miss every year, and what you can do now to stay ahead of them. To help unpack this, I spoke with Mike Hageman and Jeff Greenwell from Cox Fleet. Mike works directly with fleets on roadside events and breakdown trends. Jeff trains technicians and sees firsthand what fails when preventive maintenance doesn't happen early enough.
From our perspective here in our call center, jump starts is a huge situation that we're dealing with here, and as well as air systems and units that won't build air, are two of our most common things that we're seeing right now in the cold weather. And we'll get into some reasoning on this too. But and I would have to just throw one of the most common, I would think, and Jeff will probably agree, is neglect from folks not taking the time to check on their equipment before we're in the weather.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. It's a lot of times we see is they're not doing their preventative maintenance before winter arrives. And so when winter arrives, it's too late at that point. So now that we're dealing with, like Mike said, a lot of jump starts, air system issues, things of that nature. So if fleets would be more proactive with their maintenance during the milder months, we'll say, then they'd have a better experience in winter.
The pattern is clear. Most winter breakdowns aren't surprises. They're delayed maintenance showing up at the worst possible time.
Every region is different, but I would say at least 2 months before you're expecting the start of winter to happen. So for me in the Midwest here, probably early October, it would be the latest time to start thinking about this stuff.
And if you got someone that's a parcel carrier or someone like that that's really heavy in the holiday season, to Jeff's point, at least by early November, you need to be getting everything together and up and going, because they really start running packages heavy all through November. And that could be anything from packages to food service to whatever. But I think that way you're not, to Jeff's point too, you're not tending to these things in the extreme weather. You go ahead and take care of that before it is below freezing.
Winter prep isn't a reaction to the forecast. It's a schedule, and it changes based on where and how your fleet operates.
I think they're just missing by failing to look at the systems post-trip and pre-trip, just neglecting to look at the equipment, because so much of the systems on the modern equipment now, it's not hard to check systems, a lot of onboard things that'll tell you exactly what you need to know. It's taking the whole just-in-time world we live in now pushes these fleets where they're not taking a look at the systems properly. Jeff, I know you see a lot of that every day with what you guys are working on in the yards.
Yeah, I wouldn't say from my perspective there's necessarily one thing that they neglect or overlook, but you usually get a variety. We talk about electrical systems all the time. Well, when you start getting past just a simple battery replacement, some people tend to get a little hesitant and, well, what's it going to involve? A lot of diagnostics, a lot of downtime. They will say, well, the truck's still running, we're just going to use it. Like, no, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So let's take care of this now before it becomes a critical issue. It's not always an easy thing for companies to agree to. I can talk about air systems. That's another one. Well, brakes still work, so we're just going to run it. No, they're not going to last. You're going to run into a serious issue, potentially a safety-related issue. So let's take care of this now when it's a lot simpler and easier. But again, trying to get people to buy into that can be difficult at times, because people like to think, well, it's not a critical problem yet. Let's just wait. Like, well, no, that doesn't make it better. Is it going to get better or worse over time if we ignore it? It's going to get worse.
That it's not critical yet mindset is one of the most expensive habits fleets have. Small issues don't stay small, especially in winter.
We are sitting on years and years of roadside data, and it really comes back, I said earlier, about being attentive to the fleets. It's just one topic would be air pressure. Improper air pressure and running tires underinflated is a problem no matter which season we're in. It's often overlooked in the winter because everyone associates tires and tire failures with hot weather, which is very true, but we see a tremendous amount of tire work in the wintertime.
Tires fail in winter not because fleets ignore them, but because they assume summer rules still apply.
I think nothing is more frustrating to the customer that they've been checking their tire pressure, but not checking to make sure they have air in their spares. We do go to install a lot of spares that turn out the spares flat.
The most overlooked tire on a fleet vehicle is the spare, and it's often the one you need the most in the winter.
That's always popular with the customer when they didn't check their spare. Check the air in the spare tire because it's been in the trunk for a long time on a passenger car, for example.
Really, it is doing your preventative maintenance, doing your inspections thoroughly, ensuring that you are following up with those repairs, making sure that those repairs are done before you get to that point. And then to what Mike said earlier, it's doing kind of your pre-trip and your post-trips, ensuring that drivers are checking over, these vehicles, ensuring that everything checks out. So just sticking with it consistently. I would say consistency is your best friend.
I think it helps in a lot of the communications we do from the Cox Fleet side out to our customers, especially with data that we pick up on the emergency side, roadside things that we do. It's even more frustrating for the customer because it's so simple to prevent, like an air system issue, by just simply draining the tanks several times. Drain off the tanks a few times a week. Make sure you're not going to have a problem. Load testing those batteries, and I think the whole maintenance thing gets to be a little bit of a burden on them thinking. And I think a lot of times taking some of these key things that are so common and have the folks just focus on a few simple things will help them so much on that. That we've seen make a big impact on there. These trucks have block heaters. We see so many repairs every day. They just didn't plug the truck in, or they wouldn't have had to call for service. So there's a lot of self-inflicted things that we see in our emergency side of it and I really just think it's educating the customers more.
Winter breakdowns aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. Preparation matters for driver safety, not just uptime.
And I always think about from a safety perspective too, because no matter how well prepared you are, if you get out in sub-zero temperatures, things can happen. The best maintained vehicles have issues too. And whether it be first aid kits, road flares, jumper cables, bottled water, a few things like that to keep in your truck, situations can get dangerous really quick. Even more so in the wintertime. So just things to think about from a safety perspective as well.
Technology can help fleets get ahead, but only if someone listens.
And I think obviously when we get into winter weather, make sure that they're putting conditioner in their fuels if they need to, or running blended fuels if they're in a situation where they can. I mentioned earlier, and I say this because, boy, when you get into a big situation where Jeff's saying it, they've gelled the fuel completely up and below zero weather, not realizing their trucks actually have fuel heaters on them, and the drivers being educated to turn those on. I've seen, boy, that was a frustrating customer that just didn't realize the truck was even equipped, and they could have saved themselves trouble there by knowing their equipment. From that perspective, these trucks run at such, our modern equipment, and it can be of any class size, run at so much hotter temperatures than they used to for emissions and everything. It's critical to make sure if they're washing their trucks or taking care of their trucks that the radiator screens and all are checked for debris, because you got a lot of salt and slag and things on the road now, because it's amazing how many vehicles you'll see on the side of the road that are running hot in cold weather. And it's critical to check your cooling systems, not only for the obvious things there that their heaters are working and that kind of stuff, but it's amazing how much we've got to take care of that. And Jeff, simple ones that I think of too is before they leave the lot, make sure their windshield wipers are working properly, wiper motors, wiper blades. Those are extremely expensive over the road repairs if now the driver's calling at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. So, and those are so frustrating for the customer. To where Jeff is, I think, scanning your gauges and taking a look a few times an hour if you're out driving like that, or is your alternator charging properly? It normally sits right up there about 13.8, 14. Where is it? Because if you look up and all of a sudden I'm running along with 10, 10 volts on there, I need to get a hold of someone while this truck's still running, because they'll drive them, same thing as my truck not having a regen right. And now I'm driving along, so I'm eventually going to come and derate or things along those lines. So as Jeff said, yes, these trucks will tell you. There's plenty of telemetry on them to tell you all you really need to know about the operating, and especially in cold weather, like looking at that temperature gauge, because you got a blocked up radiator, you might realize, hey, I'm running over normal temperature and at zero. We need to check on something. So I think just being observant and if you see, it's the old, if you see something, say something, talk to your maintenance folks anytime you can before you leave the yard. We've been preaching that for years, and that's still true today.
Even fleets without dedicated maintenance teams can reduce winter downtime.
For the fleets to just familiarize yourself with what the maintenance practices and intervals are suggested by the OEM on this lighter duty equipment, even your own passenger car, for example.
Understanding we call them service intervals, for your trucks definitely is important and key. So, understand, okay, you can schedule and plan your services at that point. Okay, 5,000 miles, we need to take it in and get this done. 15,000, it's this, 20,000, down the line. And just understand that that's the need, and you need to meet or exceed that expectation. Because if you start going past it, well, you're opening yourself up to problems, catastrophic problems.
Winter breakdowns aren't inevitable. They're preventable with earlier planning, consistent habits, and acting on what vehicles and data already tell us. The fleets that prepare before winter hits are the ones that stay moving when it does.